We're here live at BitBasel 2025. Of course, you've seen it's a Super Bowl event of BitBasel and what they do here. And we're actually with the Godfather of Crypto, Michael, in the building. What's up, Mike?
All right.
What's going on? As you guys see now with the Bitcoin and blockchain technology, it's really getting rewrapped in every shape and form, from medical fields to security to real estate to art. Is this everything you would imagine or envision the future when you first got into Bitcoin blockchain technology?
Well, that was the promise even back then. And certainly everything that we all dreamed about is at least on the precipice of happening. You know, when I first got into Bitcoin, it was 2013. It was $11 at the start of that year, and went up to about $250, and then it went crashing down to $60. And I was trying to convince people to buy at $60, and they're all like, "No, it's drug money, it's a scam, etc." And you know, that's one reason I wrote the book, was to really help educate traditional investors who are investors in real estate, in tech, in startups. I mean, you think startup people would understand risk and reward. You know, the risk of going to zero is pretty low, and the risk, especially back then, the reward could have been 1,000x, which is what happened.
It's just incredible to see the price surge from, you know, even from 1,000 to 100,000. And you know, I worked in the emergency room before I got really into crypto, into DeFi, and I was literally telling everyone in 2015, 16, when I first started wrapping into this and learning more about it, I was like, oh my God, this is the future. We need to get in right now. And you know, I was trying to tell people, listen, this is like stock 2.0 era that's about to come in. So just naturally, me, I was always a visionary for the future. I know sometimes that can be my demise, but I'm always envisioning what can be more. And now watching it come together is something probably not only amazing to you, but it's historic to see. Now we're going into this digital gold era rush. Now eventually now it's about to, you know, take over the bank systems and more. You're seeing now Vanguard just released the news that they're gonna have their investors be able to purchase actual Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana.
Well, as ETFs.
As ETFs, and as well, we saw Bank of America now as well, just, I guess, suggested 4% to their investors.
1 to 4%, whereas before they had no recommendation. No, I mean, the biggest names in TradFi are now saying it's safe to come into the water. They didn't say that back when you could have made the real money at $100.
Oh yeah.
And they didn't say that before they had already made a commitment. Trust me, they've all bought. And now that they bought, they want the price to go up. But you know, you have the cycles though, which I wrote about in my book, Bitcoin Supercycle, which is Simon & Schuster distributes it, and it's available on Amazon, as well as I just came out with an AI version, Bitcoin Supercycle.ai. And you can get translated into 10 different languages as an audiobook, and also just ask me questions as an AI.
That's awesome. So you're always adapting as well as we move on into the future of blockchain technology. And of course, right, we did see just even years ago, they were like, oh, we're not going to get into it. There were even like rumors that if any of their staffs spoke about Bitcoin or blockchain, that they were going to let them go. And now you see just in the last couple of years, it's like, okay, let's go.
I always say, you know, don't look at what I say, look at what I do. Jamie Dimon back in 2015 said he would fire anybody who was stupid enough to buy Bitcoin at JP Morgan, and then one of the divisions bought a hell of a lot of Bitcoin right after the price drop when he said that.
Oh my God, that's why it's just amazing to see it come into fruition now. It's to the point where we're gonna see in the next 4 to 8 years, we're gonna see now everybody rewrapping their businesses in blockchain form. But as well, now you're seeing countries are now building reserve assets just to hold Bitcoin. So this is something that was bound to happen now that we're seeing everything go to tech, you know, in all forms. You know, even I worked in the medical field, we saw that everybody relied on the software to, you know, do the labs, the orders, organization, to see if someone did their x-ray, this, and it really brought the forefront of, you know, even improving the medical facility. But now we're gonna see now blockchain technology is gonna improve all aspects, from security to, you know, even just all medical records for privacy. So I just love
for medical records. I mean, there isn't anything that's like become the big solution yet, but there's a lot of people working on it. But the holy grail for medical, I'd say, would be, you know, be able to have the patient and I said this 10 years ago, have the patient be able to control access to their medical record. Because the problem right now is most medical records are stored in the cloud, which means a hacker can go on and hack around and spill out 100 million medical records. In blockchain, if you're able to hack it, maybe you get one record, right? Because they're all individually protected.
That's amazing. I'm just giving an example, of course, because where I came from in my job, 9 to 5 before I started getting more into DeFi. But now I'm just seeing that, now more companies, businesses, everybody wants to tokenize themselves or be part of this revolution now that we're seeing from traditional to digital finance.
You still have to be careful, though, because just because you want to tokenize yourself or your art or whatever doesn't mean more people want to buy it. We went through this in the NFT phase, right? When all of a sudden every artist said, oh, I'm now an NFT artist, I'm going to become a multimillionaire. And just because you have a 100x increase in supply does not mean there's a 100x increase in demand. I mean, artists should understand this very well, because they're always like, it's a million artists and there's maybe 10,000 serious buyers, so you have to figure out how to get into that top tier, or at least how to carve out a specialty for your particular art. And just having it as an NFT or having it as an RWA, increases a little bit of the appeal, but it doesn't magically make you worth 100 times the value.
No, and that's an important fact that you brought up. Because, people need to learn that they also need to just build here. It's not just only making 100 or 1,000x on your product or your business. It's also just really rewrapping the whole infrastructure of their business in the blockchain technology to better improve it as well. So with your book, The Supercycle, does it explain, years of cycles ahead or kind of currently what's happening?
I talk about the fact that there are cycles and how that volatility should not scare you if you understand it. Because what happens is people listen to the mainstream media, whenever the price goes down, they're like, oh, I'm glad I didn't buy Bitcoin. Instead, that's exactly when you should be buying it.
Yeah, as you can see, the market's doing good. Example like Jim Cramer, like, please, Cramer, don't say anything. Just leave. Right now, we're looking good. But, that's what I try to tell people. Look at the
reverse Cramer seems to work more than that. You do exactly the opposite of what he says.
Of course. But we're seeing now, if people understand really, we're seeing kind of when the internet came out in 83 and the telecom bill came out in 96. And after that, we really saw the integration of all forms of people getting into internet. And the white paper came out in 2008, 2009. And now we're seeing the acts, the executive orders being placed. So I feel like we're in the same time frame, maybe in the early 2000s, you would say.
I mean, there's a chart, you can Google it, that basically is internet adoption versus blockchain adoption, or Bitcoin adoption. And it's pretty close of a line. So I think now we're at about 400 million users of Bitcoin. That's including anybody even has $1 worth of it. There's about 700 million, almost 8, of crypto, but that is people who have Dogecoin and no Bitcoin. So it's only a little over half the people who own any crypto that own any Bitcoin.
Of course.
And but Bitcoin is the mothership. And I look at if you don't have Bitcoin, you're really not serious in crypto. And so for the most part, we're only at 5% of global adoption. And if you look at everything, it was usually disruptive. You eventually get to 20, 30, 40. I mean, telephones went from 0 to 100% almost, right? Everybody has a telephone. Some people have 2 or 3. The internet is at about, I think, 80% or so. People having their own internet line, because some telephones don't have internet. But if we get to even 20% adoption from 5, where is that Bitcoin going to come from? Because we're almost out of Bitcoin. It has to come from the current holders.
I love it. And that's why I've been always telling as much as I can. It doesn't matter who I speak to. I definitely have to just mention to them, do you have a portfolio of a strategy of investing? If not,
I asked, do you have one Bitcoin? And you have if not, do you have a strategy to get one? When the market goes down, it's easier to get. We're probably going to crash out around 60K or so, which is half the price of where it was in October. So that means if you couldn't easily afford one at 120, you're able to get closer. Even if you buy a half of one for 30K and you save up money over the next year to buy a half of one, you're now halfway there and you wait to the next crash, or you start, dollar cost averaging on the way up and then maybe hold off on the way down, just hold your cash and buy again, and hopefully in that, because right now there's 8 billion people in the world and less than about 1 million of them have one Bitcoin. That's it.
Yeah, and that's what I've always been stressing people. At least please own one Bitcoin, or even please 10%. Well, great example.
When I was getting in fact, I have an art piece on this, limited edition, where it has like a bunch of people with one Bitcoin marching around the room out of like a cloud or something, and it basically says 1 million club. If you have 21 Bitcoin, you're 1 in a million. Because no more than 1 million people could ever own 21 Bitcoin, and it's actually a lot lower than that, because the number that own like 1,000 Bitcoin.
But I continue to always just educate people. Please understand how important it is to just accumulate just one Bitcoin. Right. And the fact that you said you got to wait for these crashes or the liquidations that they're doing, as you see, some of it seems a little manipulated. But that's when you can say, hey guys, get in dollar cost.
You could have bought as much Bitcoin as you wanted in early 23, around 16,000. You're never going to see that number again. You never come close to seeing the number of the last crash. Last crash was 15,000. You had months to get it in between 16 and 20. You're never going to see that number again. The lowest we're going to crash, if all hell breaks loose, maybe we got on a 40. We're not going to go down to 30. We're certainly not going to go down to 15 ever again. Satoshi in the white paper said, as long as the amount of new Bitcoin purchased exceeds the amount of new Bitcoin mined, which is getting cut in half every 4 years, over a 4-year period, the price has to go up. It's supply and demand. The fluctuation, the volatility, is all based on fear and greed. And I named those fear and greed cycles in the book, and they've been very consistent, and they happen in the same order. Bitcoin spring starts the day of the halving. It lasts about 4 to 7 months. It's beginning a little bit longer each time. And that is when miners go from profitable to unprofitable. But instead of the price dropping, it actually stays flat. Because for everybody who sells because they're a miner and they have to pay the bills, fewer these days because a lot of times they're public companies or they have other sources of funding. But for anybody who sells Bitcoin during that period, someone else has happened to buy, because if they understand the cycles, they know that it's going to go up eventually in a short period of time. And sure enough, the most profitable day in Bitcoin to buy, guaranteed, is the first day of Bitcoin summer. That is the day when the price, even by $1 or a penny, exceeds the prior all-time high. So this time that number was 73,850, and I projected in the book that if Trump won, it would happen in early November, and if Kamala won, it would probably take to the end of the summer.
With Brock and Michael.
Incredible.
And
basically, Trump did win, and he then listened to the stage in the background. They're talking about my panel, so sorry I got a little distracted. But basically, that day it shot up like a rocket ship. It was 100,000 3 weeks later. So on an IRR basis, on a daily basis, if you only want to buy once every four quarters, the best time in the long term is to buy at the very bottom. But the second best time is to buy the day of the halving, because you can then buy it goes way up, and then you look and see when the bubbles may be popping for that little sector, and then you sell it and you can buy back again. So obviously I have a fund that is based on my book, and we buy and sell probably a couple times a month. We're not hyperactive traders. We're not trading by agents 10 times a day. We're trading when we think we can make 5 to 8% profit, either going short or long. And the thesis is sell most of it right at the top, and then buy it all back right at the bottom. You're never going to hit the exact day, although we've done that a couple times, at least I have. But if you get it within 20%, you're doing way better than the price of Bitcoin.
Amazing. You guys are hearing it from Mike himself. You better at least own one Bitcoin, and as well, he's telling you strategies to make sure you dollar cost average, or as well make profits and accumulate more Bitcoin, all while the rise of Bitcoin is going up. I truly do believe that
rise is not going on right now, though. It's on its way down.
You think so?
We're in Bitcoin fall. The bubble popped on October 4th. As predicted in my book, the fourth quarter of the year after the halving. That's the quarter we're in. I thought it might go a little higher and it might last a little bit longer, but it made sense to be October 4th. That was actually the same number of days from the low of 2022 as you had 4 years earlier from the low of 2018.
Yeah, I did see a pattern like that happen where I saw in right after the full moon of October 5th, everything just kind of slightly went down, and then it just went.
Well, I didn't see anything on full moons. This is based on actual day count.
Well, yeah.
1064.
Of course, this is saying the trend. Sometimes I've noticed in the market, but that's good for everyone to know, and I appreciate that, Mike. And where can people purchase your book?
2 ways. If you want the hardcover book, you go to Amazon. It's also distributed in bookstores by Simon & Schuster, but the easiest way is just go to Amazon. Bitcoin Supercycle or Michael Terpin. It's available on lovely hard copy book. I didn't bring one with me, or I would have held it up. And then also has a Kindle version. And then if you go to bitcoinsupercycle.ai, you can get an audio book in, I think it's 10 or 11 different languages. My voice speaking in Chinese, pretty funny, and in Spanish, and in French, and in Arabic.
I got it here.
Yeah, and then I also have I have an LLM that answers questions from the book with my avatar. So you get all that for $49 a year, I think it is.
I love it, Mike. Well, appreciate your time as well. And of course, buy these dips, guys. But this is 2025 BitBasel with Mike Terpin. Appreciate you, sir.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.